Hi everybody. You may not have met me yet because this is going to appear before the first episodes of Cooking with a Big Glass of Wine have started, even though we've filmed a number of episodes. I just wanted to take a moment today and tell you something a little bit about Cooking with a Big Glass of Wine. The whole project started because my kids love to eat. And one year they gave me a subscription to a cookbook service where I could write my own cookbook. Of course, we named it Cooking with a Big Glass of Wine because we all know I love my wine. But one of the things that's incredibly important to me is cooking for those you love and cooking with those you love. Because meals should bring joy. Well, we are now cooking in the time of COVID, which is what brought about the television program. And we can't be with the people we love. And we can't maybe share a meal with them as much as we'd like to. But that doesn't mean they're not in our hearts. So right now I'd like to take a moment and thank and recognize a lot of the people that I have cooked with over the years, or cooked for, or learned from. First of all, I want to talk about my brothers, Chris and his family, Hiroko, Kathleen, Mana, and Julian. Hiroko makes an adobe chicken that I've never been able to manage. And Chris, I've talked you through turnip/rutabaga on more than one Thanksgiving. Charlie, Ann, Maggie, and Carl. Charlie, your salmon crostinis are amazing. Florence, Jerry, with Michael, Debbie, Joey, and Jerry. Florence, you are the most gracious cook and person I have ever met. And Jerry, you just love family beyond belief. And Jerry Jr., going into restaurant, and Joey, and everybody. I know there's things that I'm going to miss things, so please don't mean that it doesn't mean I don't love you all. Then Mom and Dad, Jack's parents. Mom, I still use her brie casserole recipe. It wouldn't be Christmas without it. And Dad, well, he didn't cook, he loved to eat. And he just loves sitting and talking to his family. I'm actually reading some of this because I don't want to forget anybody. Then we have Jack's sister and brother, Becky and Jim. Becky makes the most amazing grits I have ever had, and her little asparagus cocktail rolls just always have a little something in the freezer to take out and have with a cocktail. And Jim, Christmas wouldn't be the same without your cookies. And they're always tie-dyed, and they bring such joy to people. And then we have my mother and father, Ma and Dad. Ma made a chicken with spices I've never been able to duplicate. I try to make her chicken and it gives me a little agita. Hers never did. Dad made a vinegar's chicken that was Stretch's chicken. Once again, should have written something down. Can't replicate it to save my life. Always, always, if your family makes a recipe you love, get them to cook it with you. First off, you're going to laugh a lot, and then you're going to eat well. Let's see, who do I go to next? Now we have John and Lisa. John, you take after your father. You love to smoke. You love to smoke meats. And I hear one day I'm going to have something delicious coming off your smoker. And then Lisa, Christmas isn't your, or Christmas, or Thanksgiving isn't Thanksgiving without some carrot cakes from you. And the fact that you make some without nuts for Edward just is wonderful. Megan and Will. Megan makes amazing zucchini spirals. I know that seems simple to you maybe, Megan, but honestly, you're the reason I like zucchini spirals. And Will, I know Dad envies your grill skills. He thinks you've got the touch, man, more than you'd ever know. And then little Jackson and William. Well, Jackson, you're a little too young to cook, but you love to eat. And William, you and I have already baked brownies together, and I will treasure that memory. Then we have Edward and Serenia. Well, you've met those people already. Serenia's standing behind the camera right now, and Edward's popped in once or twice and made sure his shot has been filmed correctly. Edward says he makes a meatloaf better than mine. Well, one day he's going to have to prove it, isn't he? And Serenia, I'm told, you make a fried chicken that is amazing, and Edward raves about it every time you make it. When am I going to taste some? And of course we have Jack. Jack, who makes all of this possible for each and every one of us every day. Who also makes the most amazing pulled pork that I have ever had. And I bring this up because we're closing in on Thanksgiving. And we cannot be together. And we will probably not be together for Christmas because of cooking in the era of COVID. But that doesn't mean you're not in my heart. Does not mean you're not in my soul. And it doesn't mean I'm not still cooking for you. Maybe in my mind, but I've talked many of you through recipes during this. Not all. And I know there's people I've missed talking about, our extended families in Michigan and Florida and far off Belleville and Newark and New York and places beyond. I love you all. We love you all. Please stay safe, wear a mask, put our big people's pants on, and realize if we just do this now, we're going to get through it together. And pretty soon, this empty table will be filled with everybody we love. Now let's go cook some food. Okie dokie. Welcome back to Cooking with a Big Glass of Wine, guys. I know, welcome back. You haven't seen the first episode. We're not sure you ever will. If we have to, we'll redo. That was when we visited Gavadil and Broccoli. But today what we're going to do is we're going to do an appetizer. Italian stuffed mushrooms, the mushroom caps. So I'm showing you the ingredients this time. We have, of course, mushrooms. This is a Italian sausage. It's a Kraft Italian sausage made from a place up in upstate New York. Some onions, really we're only going to use one, but it looked better in the shot. Some margarine, mozzarella, and the romaine is going to be for garnish. So what I'm going to do first is we're going to take this Italian sausage, and you're going to want to brown this, all right? So what we're going to do, we're not going to need all of this for the mushroom caps because we're using small mushroom caps, as you can see, all right? So we're going to take about half of this sausage. We're going to cut it in half. All right, we're just going to put this aside, refrigerate it for later. We'll do something fun with that. All right, now this, as you can tell, has an exterior skin on it. So you cut it down All right? And you just take it out of that skin. All right, you don't want to lose that. That's good stuff. All right? And turn on the stove. No, don't lick my hands, Yuri. That's raw pork. But because Yuri was licking my hands, I'm going to get a little soap and water on them because that's what you do. All right? Yeah, and I'm going to tell you guys, I know you see fancy soaps all over the place. Dishwashing soap works just fine. All right? No, we are not being sponsored by Palmolive. But that's okay if we are. Hint, hint. Okay, warm water, hot water. Wash your hands really nicely. If you have nails, guys, get under them because, believe it or not, your fingernails will hide a lot of stuff. Okay. Anyway, while I was doing that, my pan was heating up. Gotta take out a dish towel out of my dish towel holder. And we're going to put this in here. It doesn't look like a lot of sausage, but we're going to add stuff to that in a little bit. So we're just going to start that cooking. Going to put it on kind of a medium-ish heat. As I may have mentioned in the first episode, which you will see someday maybe, I have a stove that has graduated temperatures. The temperatures, 2 low burners, 2 intense burners, all right? These 2 intense burners, with these guys, you only want to do when you're doing something that you want to get through fairly quickly. If you're going to do something on a slow cook, you want them on the low heat burners. But you know what? I'm looking at this, and honestly, I think I'm going to add more of this sausage. And it would seem that this particular sausage does not have a lot of fat in it. And you want to have a little oil when you're browning something, because otherwise you're actually just kind of burning it. So put a tablespoon maybe in. You won't know that until you actually start cooking or browning your sausage. You've got to look at it. And as you can see in the pan, until I added that, there really wasn't a lot of fat coming off that sausage. Okay. Now there may be some cooks who are gonna, or chefs who are gonna argue with what I'm about to do. I'm actually gonna move this to the back burner so I can move to the next step. Okay, so I'm gonna move my teapot. I'm going to move that to the back burner. I'm going to turn it on low. All right. And now I'm just going to let that cook. We'll come back to it. What we're actually going to do is we're going to take some mushrooms. Because this is going to take a little while. Mushrooms, one of my favorite things in the world. You can do these. I'm just using button white because that's what I have. If you have portobellos or the little guys, creminis, you can use those. So I'm going to set these aside. Take a look. These, I would say there's probably maybe 20, 30 mushrooms in here. All right, since they're small. And these, what we're making is just an appetizer, so it's okay not to have a ton. They don't need to be real big. You could probably do this dish as a second course after your salad. Then I would use a nice sized portobello. And then that's a whole other world because you got to scrape them out with the fins and things like that. But here's what we're going to do. I'm going to do something that other people do not do. Everybody tells you just take a damp cloth and wipe off the surface dirt. The surface medium, the dirt that they grow mushrooms in, it's sterilized. And they tell you not to do what I'm doing because it absorbs water, all right? But I'm going to tell you something else. I'm a little lazy. So, well, I'm not really lazy. But if I'm going to cook these right away, I know it's okay. Because I won't, they're not going to sit and soak in water. Which, years ago, that's actually what they told you to do. Alright, so I'm letting them dry a little bit.
Yuri.
Alright. And, Yuri, don't trip Serenia. Alright, you gotta stir this once in a while, alright? Ooh, it's getting nice and crunchy under there. That's always gonna be fun. Alright? Yes, Yuri, later you'll get a taste of something. Alright? And just constantly break this up. If it doesn't get fine enough when you're breaking it up, we'll mash it later. All right, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna take a bowl and we're gonna pop off the stems. Now, I gotta get a clean knife because this one's had pork. Excuse me. Thank you.
Yuri, no.
What I will tell you to do, you do have to take the tip of the stem off, only because that's a little hard, okay? But the other portion you want to save, because we're going to chop these up later. So, no stem there. Like I said, we're going to take the top of the stem off. We're going to save those, not because we're going to use them in any cooking dish. What we're going to do is we're going to put those in the composter. Okay, this stem, I'm going to take out this way because you need to have a little hole in there because otherwise you won't have any place to stuff stuff. Stuff. Okay. All right. They should, you know, a mushroom is nice when it just pops out. See, that's perfect. Mm-hmm. Okay. Waving the knife around like that is probably not a great idea.
It's theatrical.
But I have been doing this, guys, for years. Most of you know I cook professionally in restaurants and corporate feeding. Loved doing corporate feeding. I enjoyed the heck out of it, and I used to get to be very, very theatrical doing that. Okay, guys, as you can now see, this sausage is not nicely browned. It really doesn't, not every little kernel has to be browned. Not every little crumble.
Wait, how much sausage is in there?
Oh, okay. Thank you, Serenia. In here I put 3/4 of a pound of sausage. All right? I tend to use sweet. It's just what I like. But if you like something a little arrabbiata, which would be called angry, my little bit of Italian I know, you could use a hot sausage. But make sure you know the taste of the hot sausage, because not all hot sausages are created equal. Some hot sausages are, your eyes could literally bug out, all right? So you don't want to do that. And, you know, if you think you want a little zhuzh in this just because, you could probably put a little crushed red pepper. I wouldn't do it, but that's really what makes, a lot of times what makes hot pepper hot is there's some crushed red peppers and things like that in there. All right, so we're going to shut this off because we really don't need to cook this anymore right now. Okay, but what we are going to do is we're going to take a strainer and we're going to take a bowl, which if I thought about it, I would have had prepped. I love these bowls. I got them at a 50-cent auction or something, where they pretty much just kept putting stuff on trays, and I finally ordered them. And these bowls have been with me for over 30 years. So something I bought before Daddy, Papa, and I were married. All right, so we're going to take this, and we are going to strain this sausage. And you want to do that because you really don't want to have that extra oil in your mushrooms, in your appetizers. Okay, so what I'm going to do now, I'm going to just leave that on the back. We're going to use that in a few minutes. No, we're not going to clean it, because honestly we can all use those little bits and things that are on the bottom of the pan. They're just going to add flavor to things. You don't always want to do that, but what we're going to add are the mushrooms and the onions. Now, remember I said that I used between 20 and 30? I just finished counting them. There are actually 28 mushroom caps. And as you can see, they've all been taken apart so that we have the space where we're going to fill them in a few minutes. And actually, we're going to take some margarine before I do this. And we're going to start heating and melting down some margarine. I only want about a half a stick. That may be more than I want. It may be less than I want. But I can always add more to the pan. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to melt this down. And then when it's melted, I'm going to add my mushroom caps in there. So I'm going to do a small pre-cook on the mushrooms. You do a small pre-cook because when you heat this up, the mushrooms will pretty much be raw in the center if you don't have them pre-cooked a little. Now there's some people who like that. If you like raw mushrooms, then you're great. Personally, I don't. When I make stuffed mushrooms for Thanksgiving, I always pre-cook them. And then on top of everything else, I can slide them in and out of the oven fairly quickly. They're all done. I'm really just heating them. So life is good. All right, so I'm going to put my margarine aside. I have some mushrooms that I've already diced. And this doesn't have to, these are the stems I pulled out. This does not have to be a regulated dice. It just needs to be a little smaller than it currently is. The reason being is mushrooms will shrink once you cook them, especially in this, okay? Doesn't need fancy knife work, all right? So we're going to take that. We're going to put that in here. All right. I slide my knife under there. There will be people who say don't do that because it will dull your blade. I agree with them, but I do it anyway. I could, if I wanted to, I could turn the knife and do it that way. All right, here's my big fancy trick of the day. We need onions for this. We need about a half an onion. All right, so I just cut it in half. I'm going to move this aside. Easy way of getting a fairly regulated dice of onion. Put your hand over the top of the onion. Just slice down. They're fairly even in slice. The bigger the onion, the more you're going to get on this without having to worry about moving your knife. But if you look at it, so the ones on the end, there's little round caps that will always be there. You have to go in and just check. But pretty much, those are all pretty much a similar dice. You may look and you go, okay, I need to chop up a little piece. But it's not this fancy that people normally do. The other thing people need to know about with knife work Knife work. Keep the tip of your knife down on the cutting board if you have to dice, and do this way. Keep your hands curved so that if a knife does come down, it's coming on the side of your skin. It's not coming down to cut off the tip of your finger. All right? So this is, like I said, this is how I do it. But, and if I used one of my bigger knives like this, I'd have more space. But if you just push it under there, you're good. All right, so now we've got this. My butter is almost ready. And I'm going to come over here. I'm using a very big pan on this. And the reason being is I'm just going to put these mushroom caps in. Just like this. All right? I'm going to put them. You want to make sure your pan is going to be hot. You don't want it all over this. You don't. If you can do it in fewer batches, it just makes your life easier. Okay. I'm not going to be able to fit all 28, but remember what I said about mushrooms, they shrink. Okay. I may have to add a little bit of margarine to that. I've only got 3 left over. Oh, please, I gotta figure out how to fit those in. Poor little things. Why don't I get to be on the A team? Well, you do. All of my family is in the A team. All right. So, now, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna turn my sausage pan back on. And remember what I said? That I wanted to keep these little brown bits? There's a lot of flavor in there. And then we had olive oil in there earlier. Now I'm just going to add about a tablespoon and a half, maybe, yeah, about a tablespoon and a half of margarine. I won't use butter in this. People will go, why not? Butter burns. Butter has a high burning capacity. So I'm going to use a little margarine. If you insist that you want to use a little margarine, butter rather, go ahead. But then do half margarine, half butter, because that will cut down on the amount of burn that you get. Butter burns. Always remember it, it's the solids in there. Now we're going to let that melt. We do not need any cutting anymore. I'm listening to this. I'll have to turn it. I'm listening to this. When it's melted, I'm going to add my mushrooms and my onions. What I want to do now is I want to add some mozzarella. Yes, this is a big honkin' thing of mozzarella. You can buy a block of it. You can buy shredded. We happen to buy a big 5-pound loaf. As you may or may not know, right now these episodes are being done during the lockdown. So we got a 5-pound block of mozzarella. We're going to cut that in half because we definitely don't want to try and hand grate that block of mozzarella. You know, it's got to be a manageable size. All right, so I'm just going to slice this down. Now, if I weren't putting cheese in this dish, if I weren't putting sausage in this dish, it could be vegan. And you could actually stuff this mushroom with just the onions and the mushrooms and have a really nice dish and do some breadcrumb or something to keep it together. But I like to put a meat or a seafood, but I always like to put cheese in. Always. We're going to probably need a little under a cup of grated cheese. But as I said, you can use pre-grated cheese. It's fine. You can also add some Parmesan if you wish. I may add a little Parmesan today. Okay, and that's about a cup. All right, So we've reached the point where, oh, look how pretty they look. We got to start turning these mushrooms, okay? And see, I told you they'd shrink, and they did. Oops. And you can also see there's some liquid that comes out of them. So what I'm actually going to do this time, I'm just going to turn them all over. But you can see that they do absorb liquid. Because see, there's more liquid in there than the 2 tablespoons of, tablespoon and a half of margarine. So you just have them going. I'm going to turn these down to almost low. Because I really just want them to finish up on the inside. You want the browning look. I'm going to turn this pan a little so that, oops, this side gets a little less brown. These guys were up towards the rim of the pan. That's why they're like that. Okay, now we're going to move over to our pan that we melted that had, see the brown bits. Look at that. They're all coming up. How wonderful. That'll let a nice little crunch. We're going to take this, turn this up a little bit. Let's get it a little hot. Oh, should be getting hot because I see the margarine boiling down there. Not boiling, bubbling, which is not the same. And you know it's hot enough because you hear that sizzle as you put them in the pan. All right. All right. I'm going to move this over here. As soon as these are finished, I'm going to put them on a pan. I'm going to do that because that will help draw out some of that liquid that's there. All right? Okay. I turned it up just a shade because I don't want it to completely steam, but I want to give them a little bit more heat. And we'll come back when that's brown and ready. All right, we're back in, and just in case you may or may not hear something, Yuri has decided he wants to be a vocal participant in this episode. So if he starts talking, we're just going to ignore him. All right, so now let's look at this, and you can see that the mushrooms and those onions are nicely browned. We don't want them overdone. Remember, they're going to go back in the oven later. All right? So, oh, and I should turn on the oven. This is going to be a bake at 350. My oven does a preset for 350, so we're going to have that going. All right, we're going to take the mushrooms out, and we're going to put them on a piece of paper towel because, ooh, that's going to be a little guy. That's for you, William. Yes, William, my grandson. Unfortunately, he's not here. He's up in Massachusetts right now. I'm not going to use this. I'm going to take a spatula. Watching me do every single one of those would be absolutely boring. And it's boring for me, too. We don't need to be that fancy. All right, see? Look how that goes. All right. You can even, if they're not all turned face up, that's okay. I just did it for look so you could see. You see, there's still a little liquid in there, so I may turn that over. I should turn it over. The only thing really left in the bottom of this pan is that margarine. The water has all gotten, the liquids have all been reabsorbed into the mushrooms. Okay, so I'm going to take this, I'm going to put it over here. Maybe you can see it a little better. There is liquid in these mushrooms. If you notice, I put them on paper towel, and you can already see that it's being absorbed. So we're going to turn it. All right, this way when I put the stuffing in, which we will be doing in a very few moments. We don't have all that in the bottom of the mushroom. All right. There we go. All right, we're gonna let that sit there. And now we're gonna make our stuffing. Here's the sausage, and as you can see, there was oil that dripped out. So that's what we were trying to get rid of. We're gonna put that in there. Now we're gonna add the onions. Remember, this was a half an onion, and just the caps from, the stems from the mushrooms. So there were about 28 here. This was about 3/4 of a pound of sweet Italian sausage. All right. And we are going to add this mozzarella. If you notice, I shredded this on a piece of wax paper. Here's the raisin. No fuss, no muss, all clean. Now I could try and be fancy and pretend that I'm actually going to stir this with a spoon. But no. Make sure your hands are clean. Don't like cheese a lot? Don't put this much cheese in. Like cheese? You can add more. One of the reasons I'm doing it with my hand though is, see, some of these pieces of sausage are a little larger than I want them to be. So I can break them down just a little bit. Okay? There you go. All right. Oh, coffee in the shot. Yes, I know it's cooking with a big glass of wine, but when you're working with knives, don't have the wine until the end. All right, so we're gonna just stuff these caps. Try to make sure there's a little sausage in every one. Okay? It works better if you have larger, but we want these for an appetizer. All right? You know what, for Serenia, I'm gonna move over here so that she doesn't have to lean all the way over. And if you find that your sausage is a little too large, just crush it. I have rocks in my hand and I am crushing them with my fingers. And Yuri, when it's done, you know you always get a treat. All right, so we have our mushrooms all stuffed. If you can see, I have probably a half to a third of my stuffing left. So if you're having this, you could throw this on top of a pizza. It would be delicious. You put it in the refrigerator, and next time you're making pizza, you could throw it on top of it. If you want, you could order a plain pizza, and then when you reheat, if you have leftover pizza, throw this on top, throw it in the oven. Now you have a sausage pizza with extra cheese, and you haven't paid for it. All right? Will, if you remember, when William was born and we all got pizzas, because you were having family in, the next day, when Megan was sleeping, we reheated pizza, and we threw pepperoni on top of it and reheated it. So, because they had all plain pizzas, I think there was some vegetarians there. So we did that, and we all wound up having pepperoni pizza. It was wonderful. So now you can just add that to some leftover pizza. It's brilliant. Otherwise, I'd say cut maybe, if you're having a party, maybe do 15 more mushrooms. And just then do that with the mushrooms, then when we cook them, do them in a batch. Now what I have here is just a little bit of Parmesan cheese. Remember I talked about it? It wasn't in our original, these are the ingredients, but I decided I wanted a little. So we're gonna just sprinkle a little Parmesan cheese on top of these before we throw them in the oven. Now we're gonna put them in the oven. And you're gonna let them be in there for about 10 minutes, 15 minutes till they're nicely heated. And we'll come back and see how everything turns out. Okay, so if you recall, I said about 10 to 15 minutes on these, and you can see that the mushroom caps are all very nicely browned, and the Parmesan cheese is, sprinkled in there. It's gonna be lovely. Let me see if they're too hot. Ooh, this guy's a little warm, but I can eat him. It's delicious. We're gonna plate them up in a second, and we're gonna call in everybody.
Wait.
Bob.
Alright, good.
Isn't that nice? All right. All right.
You good?
We're good. We'll be back in a minute.
I mean, we don't have to call everybody. I could just eat them all.
As the title says, cooking with a big glass of wine. And remember what I say. Eat well, eat happy, and eat with those you love. Come on in, guys. Salud. Try one. What do we think?
Very nice.
All right.
Very nice.
Easy. You can do it with things you have in your house, probably. There's also, you could probably even do it with a breakfast one. It'd be lovely. Mix it with a little egg. So many things you could do. Enjoy. Love to all of you. There you go.
That's good.